a game.
Tell her it's serious. But don't frighten her. Don't tell her they'll kill her. Tell her it's important to be quiet. Tell her she'll have cake if she's good. Tell her to curl up as if she's in bed.
But not to sing. Tell her not to come out, even if she hears shouting. Tell her not to come out.
Don't frighten her. Tell her not to come out even if she hears nothing for a long time. Tell her we'll come and find her. Tell her we'll be here all the time. Tell her something about the men. Tell her they're bad in the game. Tell her it's a story. Tell her they'll go away.
Tell her she can make them go away if she keeps still by magic, but not to sing.
This is a photograph of her grandmothers, her uncles, and me. Tell her her uncles died. Don't tell her they were killed.
Tell her they were killed.
Don't frighten her. Tell her her grandmother was clever. Don't tell her what they did. Tell her she was brave. Tell her she taught me how to make cakes. Don't tell her what they did.
But tell her something.
Tell her more when she's older. Tell her there were people who hated Jews.
Don't tell her that. Tell her it's over now. Tell her there are still people who hate Jews. Tell her there are people who love Jews.
Don't tell her to think Jews or not Jews. Tell her more when she's older. Tell her how many. She's older. Tell her it was before she was born, and that she's not in danger.
Don't tell her there's any question of danger. Tell her we love her. Tell her dead or alive, her family all love her. Tell her her grandmother would be proud of her.
Don't tell her we're going forever. Tell her she can write to her friends. Maybe tell her her friends can come and visit. Tell her it's going to be sunny there. Tell her we're going home. Tell her it's the land God gave us.
Don't tell her religion. Tell her her lots of great-granddad lived there. Don't tell her he was driven out.
Tell her. Of course, tell her. Tell her everyone was driven out and that the country is waiting for us to come home.
Don't tell her she doesn't belong here. Tell her, of course she likes it here, but she will like it there even more. Tell her it's an adventure. Tell her no one will tease her. Tell her she can take her toys. Tell her she will make friends. Tell her she can take all her toys.
Don't tell her. Don't tell her she can take all her toys.
Tell her she's a special girl.
Tell her. Tell her about Jerusalem.
Don't tell her who they are.
Tell her something. Tell her they're Bedouin. They travel about. Tell her about camels and dates. Tell her they used to live in tents. Tell her this wasn't their home.
Don't tell her home, not home.
Don't
Tell her they're going away.
Don't tell her that they don't like her.
Tell her to be careful.
Don't tell her you used to live in this house.
No, but don't tell her her great-great-grandfather used to live in this house.
No, but don't tell her Arabs used to sleep in her bedroom. Tell her not to be rude to them. Tell her not to be frightened. Don't tell her she can't play with the children. Don't tell her she can bring them in this house.
Tell her they have plenty of friends and family. Tell her for miles and miles all around they have land of their own. Tell her again, this is our promised land.
Don't tell her they said this was a land without people.
Don't tell her I wouldn't have come if I'd known. Tell her maybe we can share.
Don't tell her that.
Tell her we won. Tell her her brother's a hero. Tell her how big their armies were. Tell her we turned them back. Tell her we're fighters. Tell her we've got new land.
Don't tell her. Don't tell her about the trouble with the swimming pool. Tell her it's our water. It's our right. Tell her it's not the water for their land.
Don't tell her anything about the water. Don't tell her about the bulldozer. Don't tell her not to look at the bulldozer. Don't tell her it was knocking the house down. Tell her it's a building site.
Don't tell her anything about the bulldozer. Don't tell her there are queues at the checkpoint. Tell her we'll be there in no time. Don't tell her anything she doesn't ask. Don't tell her the boy was shot. Don't tell her anything. Tell her we're building new farms in the desert.
Don't tell her anything about the olive fields. Tell her we're building new towns in the wilderness. Don't tell her they throw bombs. They throw stones. Don't. Just tell her they're not much good against cannons.
Don't tell her that. Don't tell her they set off bombs in cafes.
Tell her. Tell her they set off bombs in cafes. Tell her to be careful.
Don't frighten her. Tell her we need the wall to keep us safe. Tell her they want to drive us into the sea.
Tell her they don't.
Tell her they want to drive us into the sea.
Tell her we kill far more of them.
Don't tell her that. Don't frighten her. Tell her we're strong. Tell her we're entitled. Tell her they don't understand anything except violence. Tell her it is us who want peace. Tell her we're going swimming.
Tell her she can't watch the news. Tell her she can watch cartoons. Tell her she can stay up late and watch Friends. Tell her they're attacking with rockets.
Don't frighten her. Tell her only some of us have been killed. Tell her the army is coming to our defense.
Don't tell her her cousin refused to serve in the army. Don't tell her how many of them have been killed. Tell her the Hamas fighters have been killed. Tell her they're terrorists. Tell her they're filth.
Don't! Oh, don't tell her about the family of dead girls. Tell her you can't believe what you see on TV. Tell her we killed the babies by mistake. Don't tell her anything about the army.
Tell her. Tell her about the army. Tell her to be proud of the army. Tell her about the family of dead girls. Tell her their names. Why not? The whole world knows. Why shouldn't she know? Tell her there's dead babies. Did she see the babies? Tell her she's got nothing to be ashamed of. Tell her they did it to themselves.
Tell her they want their children killed to make people sorry for them.
Tell her I don't feel sorry for them. Tell her not to be sorry for them. Tell her we're the ones to be sorry for. Tell her they can't talk suffering to us. Tell her we're the Iron Fist now. Tell her it's the fog of war. Tell her we won't stop killing them until we're safe. Tell her they're animals living in the rubble now. Tell her I wouldn't care if we wiped them out. The world would hate us more is the only thing.
Tell her I don't care that the world hates us.
Tell her we're better haters. Tell her we're chosen people. Tell her when I look at one of their children covered in blood, and what do I feel? Tell her all I feel is happy it's not her.
Don't tell her that. Tell her we love her. Don't frighten her.